All right, well, John, what do we got going on with this one?
Oh, this one we got a 2018 Jeep Trailhawk with a 2.4 and a 948 TE in it. This one came over, it was at, apparently it was at the dealer and got pulled out of there for some reason, but the vehicle stopped moving and barely moves when sitting at a stoplight. That's the customer's first portion of the complaint. It turns itself off after a minute or so when you start it. And then there's a note on here about it won't shut off once it's running. Well, I don't know about that last part. That's a little odd. But when I went out to it, it wouldn't crank. So I had to put a jump box on it. I got the thing to crank. It would kind of act like it wanted to start sometimes. Other times it just cranked and cranked and cranked. Didn't sound like it spun fast, like we had a valve train problem or anything like that. I brought the thing in, went ahead and went through a couple of tests on it, and I noticed that while I was cranking it, I could smell fuel at the tailpipe, which tells me we're delivering fuel to the motor, but we're sending out the tailpipe without getting it burnt for one reason or another. So my next step naturally is pull the spark plugs out of it and take a look and see if we've got spark and check a few things like that. I did check it for codes and stuff. Nothing really stood out. The dealer was chasing a couple of codes for the variable valve timing. Apparently when the car was brought to them, there was no oil in it. They did an oil change on it. I don't know if it got any better after that at all or not. Yeah. But anyways, one of the first things that I check on these, I check oil pressure while they're cranking. If we don't have oil pressure on these, the valves don't work right. I got 30 pounds of oil pressure. I'm like, okay, I'm probably going to rule out mechanical stuff. So I pulled all the plugs out of it. All the plugs were fouled.
Well, let me get this straight. This car came to you from the dealership, and they had a quote for $15,000 for a transmission.
That's what it says right here.
So, and the last thing you're looking at here is a transmission. You're actually looking at everything else. Tell me more. I'm curious.
In all fairness, they called an what'd they call it here? Variable valve actuator assembly is what they wanted to call on it. And the transmission, apparently there was a PO 735 in the transmission, which is a 5th gear ratio error code. It doesn't do me any good because I get to it and the car doesn't start. I can't diagnose the transmission on a car that doesn't start. So what I did was pulled all the plugs out of it, looked at the plugs, I took and cleaned the plugs real quick, threw them back in, tried to start the car. I noticed every once in a while, if I just tipped into the throttle a little bit, it would try to start. And I was like, okay, a lot of times that's indicative of having not enough bypass air to run the throttle blades, and a lot of times we'll find them carboned up and stuff. So I went ahead and pulled the inlet air duct off of it and took a look inside, and what I saw kind of surprised me. This is the throttle body off of the car.
Okay.
Normally when I look in here, I expect to see, just key on, engine off, I expect to see that throttle blade sitting at an angle about like that, where we've got a little bit of bypass air around the throttle blades. When I looked at it, the throttle blades were absolutely shut. So there's no way to get bypass air for this one without having these throttle blades propped open just a little bit. And one of the things that you'll notice on a lot of the throttle by wire, when we just key on, engine off, we set this throttle blade with the spring to a certain amount open. And that allows us to start the car, get it up on fast idle. And as soon as it comes up on fast idle, then the electronics will start trimming the idle speed by pulling that blade back closed. So the default on these is actually a high idle speed. If for some reason the throttle body should break where it couldn't control this. But what I noticed when I first stuck my finger in here, there's no spring here. Normally this throttle blade would snap back when I took my fingers out. It goes all the way over. I can flip it over into the opposite direction. That's no good. So I popped the cover off it and took a look. As the gears rotate here, those throttle blades should be moving. You can see how they just barely bounce around when I bring this back. This gear is no longer connected to these throttle blades. You can see how they stop and set at different places. So there we are.
There's your problem. So I actually called this customer, and these are fun phone calls because they're thinking, $15,000 I got to spend on this car. And when in fact, so I call them up and I say, hey, listen, your engine is not running right. I can't even test your transmission because your engine is not running. We've got to get the engine running first. I'm very familiar with this transmission. You got 60,000 miles on it, and I'm not convinced that you have a transmission problem. I can't say for certain, but I got to get the engine running right. So John's recommendation was to go ahead and replace the throttle body because that thing was flat out broke, not doing what it should do. Go ahead and replace the spark plugs because they were not in good shape, and then go ahead and replace the battery. Now this particular transmission is super susceptible to battery issues. Bad voltage from the battery will cause transmission issues. And this is a classic case of, in the old days I used to say 1 out of 3 transmissions was replaced in error. That was when there were 4-speed transmissions. Now everything's 8-speed, 9-speed, 10-speed, and now these things are getting replaced all the time when they don't need to be, and this is a classic case. So I said, hey, I told her, I said, I think it was roughly $1,300, about $1,300 to do the battery, the spark plugs, and the throttle body. Keep your fingers crossed and hope you're living right because you may very well not need a transmission, but I'm pretty sure. So she got her husband on the phone. I told him exactly the same things, and we did it, and it worked fine. And you were a little concerned because it had a gear ratio.
Yeah, because it had that DTC in there, yeah.
And so we went and we set it on a 20-mile drive, 10 miles on the highway, 10 miles on the surface street, brought it back again. I didn't want to call her with good news if I wasn't sure. So then we did that again. We went another 10 miles on the highway, 10 miles on the surface street, still worked great. So I went ahead and called her back. I said, I think your transmission's fine. I think this was all you need. But one of the things that John noted is the mounts were really bad. They were starting to vibrate really bad.
Yeah, I had one of the torque strut was grounded on this one.
Yeah, it was grounded. So I went ahead and said, okay, now that I know your transmission's good, I think we should deal with your mounts. We don't have to, there was one bad for sure. I like to replace them as a set, but if you want to do just the one, I would be okay with that. And she thought about it. She was so happy she wasn't spending $15,000. She said, yeah, go ahead and replace the mounts. But this is another classic case of didn't need a transmission. Now, we're seeing this fairly regularly, John, and I would say it's almost, 3 times a week.
Yeah.
We're seeing this. I don't know if I'm exaggerating on that, but actually probably not.
I got one over there that's sure it needs a transmission and needs a fuel pump.
Right, needs a fuel pump. Then we had one last week. It came from a general repair shop, and they told them they needed a transmission. They quoted them $6,000. And they said it might be cheaper if you go to the transmission shop because maybe they can rebuild it. We got it over here, and the guy had installed an aftermarket stereo, and he stuck a power wire right into the fuse box and stretched out the fuses. Well, that same power was also down in the transmission. So that's all it was a repair in the fuse box. It was hard to find. We didn't spot it right away.
Yeah.
John had to do some good legwork to prove that out. But another classic case. So if you're make sure you're dealing with somebody who knows what they're doing. That's going to be key. And honestly, this could have been an honest mistake. I don't think that this was necessarily, but there was a couple things that were off about it. They said the transmission fluid was black. I didn't like that because you pulled out the dipstick and it was cherry red.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, so, but either way, some people are very quick. I don't know if they pencil whip these things, just quick to sell a transmission. But it's like replacing an engine because all you needed was a spark plug, right? You're going to fix it, inevitably. In this case, they wouldn't have fixed it, but you wouldn't replace an engine because you need a spark plug. And so transmissions are the same way. A lot of times, little fixes get you back on the road. It doesn't necessarily need to be $15,000. So